If you have just lost a loved one and you are feeling overwhelmed and you're not quite sure what is going on, you don't understand what has happened to you, why you're feeling the way you are feeling, you don't understand the range of emotions that you're going through, I just want you to know that one of the most confusing experiences that people go through after losing someone that they love is this. They usually start asking themselves questions because they experience emotions that they don't recognize. They find themselves crying unexpectedly, feeling exhausted, not just a physical exhaustion, maybe an emotional exhaustion or a mental exhaustion. Can't concentrate, you can't focus, you find yourself snapping, or you just apathetic. You don't feel like doing anything. And it's at this time that many people quietly begin asking themselves a very worrying questions. They start thinking that something is wrong with them. They'll start asking, what is wrong with me? If you've ever felt this way after losing someone you love, I want you to hear this very, very clearly. Nothing is wrong with you. Absolutely nothing is wrong with you. What you are experiencing is a deep emotional human response to loss. Before we begin, I just want to share with you just a little bit about why permission to feel is so close to my heart. The truth is, I created this series for myself. When I needed something like it after my loss, I couldn't find it. I came from a family of 5. It was my mom, it was my dad, my 2 brothers, and myself. Over the years, I've experienced the loss of every member of my family of origin. The first loss was my last-born brother back in 2006. This was the first time I'd ever lost someone that was close to me. And I was completely unprepared for this. The intensity of what I felt, the impact of this loss was just something that felt like it was out of this world. I didn't know what grief was. I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. It was supposed to feel or sound like. I didn't know how to navigate it. I simply did the best that I could at the time and hoped that time would somehow heal the impact of what felt so impossible to carry. And then a few years later, I lost my other brother. Then in 2016, death struck again. I lost my father. Each loss brought its own kind of grief. It was very, very different from the other one that I'd experienced before. Each one affected me very, very differently in ways that I didn't expect. I thought that because I'd been through it 3 times, maybe the next one won't be so bad. Each one taught me something very new about love, about loss, and what it means to keep living when someone you love is no longer here. Then last year, in 2025, I lost my dear mom. That one was different. That loss was very, very different. And it wasn't just different just because it was my mom. It was different because for a very, very long time, it had just been the 2 of us. Everyone in the family had gone, so it was just the 2 of us left. She was the only surviving member of the family that I was born into, that I had in life. Although I'm blessed with my children and my grandchildren, whom I love very much, and I still also have an extended family whom I cherish, but losing my mom meant becoming the only surviving member of my family of origin. And that is something that I had never anticipated before. There's something profound, about realizing that every person who was there at the beginning of your life, at the beginning of your story, is now gone. You feel so alone. And yet, even before my mother passed away, there was another kind of grief that I was already carrying. My mother lived with Alzheimer's and dementia. So over time, I found myself asking myself a question that many families facing these conditions also quietly ask themselves. And the question was, who is this person? Where is my mom? I didn't recognize the person that was still with me because it felt like spiritually I had lost her. Emotionally, I had lost her. And of course, mentally, I'd lost her. But physically, she was still with me. And I found myself grieving her long before I'd even lost her physically. Looking back now, I understand that what I was experiencing was anticipatory grief. But at the time, I didn't have language for it, no understanding of it. I didn't understand what was happening. I felt so alone most of the time in the experiences that were actually far more common because I've realized that many people go through the same. This is why I created this program, Permission to Feel. Not because I've got all the answers, no, but because I know what it feels like to search for understanding when your heart is hurting and you don't find it. My hope in this series is that it will help you to make sense of some of of the things that you are experiencing. And my hope is that it reminds you that you are not broken, you are not weak, you certainly are not alone. And most importantly, my hope is that it gives you something many of us were never taught, and that is permission to feel. This is something we were not given. But before I even go deeper into this conversation, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Gugu. I'm the founder of Arise Love Coaching. I am an integrative stress resolution specialist. I help individuals to resolve stress from its roots and not just manage or cope with it. My work focuses on mainly helping people understand and resolve the physical, emotional, mental, and even financial root causes of their stress that often lives beneath the surface of our lives. So over the years, I've worked with many individuals navigating stressful experiences such as trauma, burnout, emotional, and mental overwhelm. A few months ago, I was given the honor of speaking at another funeral. Again, I had lost another person who was very dear to me. And as I looked around the auditorium, I saw many strong faces. People were really trying to be strong. I saw composed faces. People who looked like they were okay on the surface. They were trying very, very hard to hold themselves together. And I said something very simple. I told them if they felt like crying, they should cry. If they felt overwhelmed, they were allowed to feel overwhelmed. They were allowed. Because you see, grief is not something we are meant to carry in silence. And then that same day, and for the next couple of days, even weeks afterwards, the people who had attended the funeral started talking to me. And others sent me messages. They shared with me their different stories of loss, But in that diversity of stories, I kept hearing and seeing clearly one thread, just one thread that was going through each of their stories. They had never allowed themselves to feel their pain. But that day, for the very first time, they did. Many of them cried. These messages stayed with me. They really made an impact on me because they reminded me of something very, very important. And this is that many people are not suffering because they are weak. They are suffering because they are never given permission to feel. And one thing that I've noticed again and again is this. Many people are not struggling because they are weak. No, it's not because they are weak. They are struggling because they were never taught how the emotional world actually works. They don't understand their emotions. That's why people are suffering. Grief feels so overwhelming because when we lose someone that we love, our world changes and it doesn't give us a notice. It just changes instantly. But our minds and bodies don't adjust at the same pace. Our emotional system has to slowly adjust to a reality where someone important is no longer physically present. And because of that, many people experience things they didn't expect. For example, you might find yourself feeling exhausted all the time and you don't understand what's causing this. You might struggle to concentrate. You might feel emotional waves that appear suddenly and they sometimes disappear just as quickly. You just do not understand what is going on. Some people even worry that they are losing control, and it's understandable. But what is actually happening is something much more natural. It's just that we've not been taught about it. Your emotional and nervous system is adjusting to loss. A loss that it never expected. A loss that it was never ready to process. It was not ready to process it. Simply put, it was just not prepared for this. You see, grief is not just sadness. Many people make the mistake of thinking that grief is just sadness. No, it's not just sadness. It's your heart. It's your mind, it's your body, all trying to understand a world that suddenly feels different. Things have changed, and they change suddenly and in a very, very difficult way and very cruel way. So it's the natural, emotional, mental, and sometimes physical response to death. That response to losing someone that was deeply, deeply important to us. So it's a process. This process is a process of adapting to a reality that has changed. Things have changed in a way that we did not expect or want. And unfortunately, that process takes time. This is something we cannot rush. And another thing that surprises many people is the range of emotions that grief can bring. Oh, the range of emotions that grief can bring. You get emotions that you cannot even explain. You cannot even understand what is going on. Yes, there is sadness, there's anger, there's guilt, denial, regret, confusion. There's just so much that you feel all at once, and you don't even know how to process it. Some people feel guilty because they think, oh, I should have done more. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done this. I should have said something. Maybe I shouldn't have said this. If only I had known. If only I'd done this. Sometimes people will feel anger. Sometimes anger at doctors, caregivers, maybe other family members, siblings, parents. Sometimes anger at the person who has died even. It's normal. It happens. These emotions feel very uncomfortable. They really feel uncomfortable. But these are not signs that something is wrong with you. These are not signs that you are losing it. They are signs that the relationship mattered. It mattered deeply. These are signs that you are human. You are a human being. You see, love creates deep, deep emotional bonds. So when those bonds are broken by loss, when loss shatters your heart into pieces, the heart tries to make sense of it. And most of the time, it takes time to make sense of it. It does not even know where to start, how to start putting those pieces back together. And in many cultures, people are taught that strength means hiding their emotions. Unfortunately, this is an insidious message that causes people to stay in their grief because they cover it up with strength. People will hear things like, be strong, don't cry, you need to move on. But emotional suppression often makes grief even more heavier than what it already is. Because the emotions we refuse to feel rarely disappear. They don't disappear most of the time. They just simply wait. You'll hear people say, time heals everything. I beg to differ. Time does not heal. Resolving, dealing with stuff, heals the stuff. If you don't deal with what you're going through, if you don't allow yourself to feel what you're going through, you will not heal. In order to heal, you first need to feel it, then deal with it. And once you've dealt with it, that's when you start healing. So emotions that have been repressed, that have been suppressed, they simply wait. So grief can wait. And when those emotions wait, they sometimes resurface later. And when they resurface later, it's usually very ugly. So true strength is not emotional silence. It's not emotional silence. True strength includes allowing ourselves to be human. That is actually strength. When you allow yourself to be human, you are actually a very strong human being. So this is exactly why I created this video series and named it Permission to Feel. In the coming episodes, we are going to explore many of the hidden experiences that people face after loss. And sometimes even before the death of their loved ones, like I've shared in my own experience. We'll talk about the hidden stress of grief that grief brings and that nobody ever talks about. We'll talk about the waves of grief. We'll talk about the guilt. We'll talk about the regret. We'll talk about sometimes even relief that we feel so guilty about. The loneliness that many grieving people experience even when there are people around them. It is very, very lonely. It's a very lonely place to be. And we'll talk about how healing can slowly begin. So if you are grieving right now, please remember this. What you are feeling is not weakness. It's not a weakness. It is the human heart. It's your heart adjusting to love that no longer has a physical place to land. I think that is worth repeating. It's your heart adjusting to the love that no longer knows where to go. It doesn't have a place to land. That is why it is so painful. Grief is not something that you need to rush through. No, it's something that you need to learn to understand first. And when you begin to understand your emotions, healing can finally begin, because then you are able to deal with it and then you are able to heal it. So, because healing often begins with something very simple, and that very simple thing is, allowing ourselves permission to feel. We need to allow ourselves permission to feel our pain. For a long time, we've been taught that our emotions are bad. If emotions are bad, we don't allow them to surface. And when we don't allow them to surface, they wait. So if you'd like to explore this topic more deeply, I've created a short guide called When Loss Changes Everything. You can download it from our website at ariselifecoaching.net. And if you feel that you have a need for deeper support, you need to navigate your emotional stress or grief, you are welcome to explore the resources that are available there as well. If this has helped you, please share it with someone else who might need it. And if this series resonates with you, I'd love for you to please subscribe and join me in the journey that is coming ahead. And always remember, you are allowed to feel. And thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next video.